It's going to be a really quick program if it's just you and me, Sherry.
That's just what I was thinking.
Well, Brian said he could do it and he responded to me, so unless something came up.
Well, and I actually have some people here I should probably be dealing with. So if it doesn't happen, it won't be the end of the world. But
yeah, we'll just have to see.
I didn't know what to do about that message that Alice sent me from Bone Creek about the grant thing. So I just thought I'll just send it to all of you and see if somebody responds. And fortunately you did. So
yeah, we've been having some glitches, if you will. And so I guess I knew of one other one, but I guess there were like 6 people or 6 organizations that had, but somewhere the information got lost or rerouted, yeah, or something like that. So we've temporarily suspended, we're not taking any more applications, and we'll figure out what we're going to do in terms of our granting. We only have like $700, so it's not going to be a very big, we'll just have to see what we can do. So then we also have to come up with ways to replenish that fund, so.
I understand that concept. Yes.
Oh yeah. So you just need to log on to a Zoom meeting for people to come, right? That's just the way it goes.
Well, because I saved the email with the link and everything, and I made sure it was on my the laptop computer instead of the desktop, and so I could sit here and be ready, and ta-da. Oh well, some days just go like that.
Well, it's inevitable that I will be the one sitting at our front desk, and then people will come in, and that's when they'll want to do a tour of our outside buildings.
Oh yeah.
It's not when I have another volunteer so I can do that. It's when I'm sitting up there.
Well, and I'm the only option here. So
right.
If the doorbell rings or something, I've got to take off. So
yeah, fortunately I have a volunteer this morning, so she can cover things. She's a new volunteer, so but she's been around, she's done other things for us, but so.
Well, we're up to 3 now.
Well, hey, there you go. Yeah. Hello, Audrey.
My other phone is ringing and I'm trying to hang up. Hang that up. Oh, well, it was potential spam, so I'm not missing anything. How are you all today? Staying cool?
Trying
to. It's looking like it's going to rain here, but I don't know.
It's been raining on and off for the past hour or so here.
Well, that's
between 11 and 11:30 last night, it was quite the light show, and wind and rain and mercy.
Yeah, just to the southwest of here, something went through because someone's garden shed was blown into the bean field, but I don't think Wahoo actually got anything last night. So.
Well, I found a tree branch down in my yard out in the hinterland, so I know what I'm going to do when I get home is to drag it somewhere. Fortunately, it wasn't one of the larger branches, so.
Well, we just recently completed a pretty big project. It was a 2-year project where we had all of our trees like trimmed, or they went through and they thinned out trees. I mean, it cost us a good $30,000 to just all, well, we have 5 acres on our property, and so we have a lot of old trees, and we have a railroad cut that has all sorts of trees in it, and we just have finally, it's been on our radar to do for a while, and now we just got it done, so
Well-
hopefully we won't be losing any trees or limbs. I mean, some of the small stuff might come down, but the big stuff shouldn't come down.
Well, I have 37 acres and it's along a creek, so you can imagine the trees that
Yeah.
17 acres is cropland and the rest is house and buildings and trees and creek and
Oh my gosh, you all stay busy just with that. And just here at my house, I don't know if this is true or not, but I kind of think that if I have people come, professionals come and kind of trim the trees every so often, that when we do get those bad winds, it's just the smaller branches but I'm not going to get like a half a sheath of a tree cut off and falling someplace. So, and so far that's worked.
nature trims mine for free. There we go.
We have, fortunately, on our board now, one of our board members, her husband runs a tree service. And they did both phases, is what we call them. The first phase she wasn't on the board, the second phase she was, but she recused herself from voting on anything and that sort of thing. But so we have an expert that we can call now and, hey, can you come and look at this tree for, if we really needed to. And I guess, and she helps a lot with it. And there was one tree where there was this limb that was hanging over the one of the streets, and it looked really good, but they hemmed and hawed over whether or not they should take it down, and they finally decided, yeah, we're going to take it down. Well, it turns out that it was actually pretty rotten right up next to the trunk, so we're glad
Wow.
we took it down. So
Yeah, well, you don't know that until the
Yeah.
tree is down.
well, and they did say that whole tree probably should come down within the next couple of years, and it needs to be, it's just not going to last. So
Near campus, I don't know if you've seen this, April, but there is a big tree right across the street from campus. There are a lot of rental properties, students coming in, renting a room or a partial house or whatever. Anyhow, there was this big tree. And so I noticed they were taking it down, and then they had to have someone else come because there was a humongous stump. And the other day when I drove by, it looked like some artistic person was taking a chainsaw and trying to do something creative with it. So I thought, I wonder what this is going to be.
That would be kind of cool, actually. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
I haven't gotten a chance to see that
It's
yet.
over
Is that-
on by the towers.
Oh, okay, awesome.
It's
No,
on, is that
everybody-
9th
yeah.
Avenue or whatever?
Mhm.
Yeah. So.
Hmm.
Well,
our local veterans memorial, at that building, they had taken down a tree, and somebody carved a really beautiful eagle into the trunk, and it's all painted and stuff like that. And it was there for a while, but then they ended up cutting it from the stump because the stump was still starting to rot. So they removed it from its original location. They put it on a pedestal, but it's a really beautiful piece. And it's still out in front of the memorial building, but they had, taken the tree down, and they decided to have an eagle carved into it. So
the ultimate in recycling.
exactly, yeah.
Well, I never thought about that before, because there are artists who create art out of down trees, for lack of a better word. And, I never thought of that do they have to fumigate them first or whatever? Or would it be very ephemeral that, when termites or ants or whatever get into it, it's gone. It will eventually be gone. So I'm just kind of curious about that. I hadn't thought of that before. Good points.
Well, I did talk with Brian, and Brian said he was going to be able to sort of moderate this, but he hasn't been on the call, so I guess we'll just wait and see if he shows up.
He's on the at the SAC Museum, or
Yes.
strategic, whatever its name is. I remember it's the SAC Museum, and Probably April
Oh, there
does
he is.
too. With those of us with Omaha connections, it was always called the SAC Museum. so-
Yeah, I think it's still called the Sac Museum.
Okay.
It's just easier because I think they've added something to the name now. I think it's not, it's like strategic error in Space
There
Command,
he
but I
is.
think that, yeah, there he is. So,
I'm here. Sorry, I was having some technical difficulties.
that's okay. I was earlier, so.
Yeah,
This is-
technical for me is trying to find the email where the link is.
I was having that same problem and I went through the website and I kept trying to click on it and it would take me to the calendar and I'd click on there and nothing would happen. So I finally cut and pasted and it finally worked for me, but so I'm here. Have we already started discussing how to ensure a engaging and quality guest experience?
We've
No,
been talking about trees.
Well, trees definitely would help with that.
Well, the Saunders County Museum has just spent $30,000 to have all their trees trimmed.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
And I also just realized I don't know if you guys can see it. Sorry, my background's kind of messing up. It's my happy little trees mug with Bob Ross on it. So it's all fitting.
It's all related.
well, and actually it all is. I know that, obviously the cost of maintaining your grounds, depending on the museum, where your museum is at and what you have as far as property. For us, we do have a lot of green space outside our museum, and they discovered long ago of what it's going to cost to really maintain that. They planted a lot of trees to be part of that, to obviously create, I guess, kind of a nice relaxing space. But yeah, you have to go through and trim those. We have 3 full-time facility technicians that work on our building but also do our grounds. And depending on what's going on, it's, the grass might not get mowed as often as we want. We do get a huge influx of dandelions, which I believe we have decided that we will keep the dandelions rather than trying to treat them. It does give you something to talk about. I know in our education department, a lot of times they will take a group out there and talk about why dandelions are important to the environment and bees and other other insects that go into that chain. So it's, you look at those things, but then you also look at the trees, and you've got, in the fall and autumn, you've got, do you clean up all the leaves? Do you compost? How do you work with that to keep things looking nice? And then obviously in the winter, how do you keep your parking lots cleared? Your paths into the museum cleared. We've got a nice, wonderfully long ramp people have to go up. So in the winter, that becomes a challenge to keep all the ice off of it. You don't want people slipping and sliding and having to struggle to get inside. We have the size of our facility or thing. A lot of times we'll develop a negative airflow, especially in the spring and summer, where our front doors will sometimes just start opening on its own. But also what happens is when you open a door on the other side of the building, those doors become very difficult to open. And I think all of those right there in itself will have an impact on how people view your museum. How hard was it to physically get to it, get into it? What's the presentation on the outside? Anybody have any?
So it really hits our topic.
Yes, it does. That's why when you guys said you were talking about trees, I was like, well, actually, yeah, if you've got trees and if your museum is downtown, it doesn't mean you don't have trees, because a lot of places will have trees, out there at the sidewalk. And yeah, you've got to have them trimmed. And if you're if you're a private nonprofit and your facility is downtown, the sidewalk is public property. It belongs to the city. So there's a whole other step you have to go through in order just to get permission to trim them, which means you pretty much have to put in a project package to say, we want to trim our trees. Here's why we want to trim them. Here's who we're going to have trim them. And here's what they're going to do. And obviously, as we are all familiar with government, that may take a while before you get permission to do it. Most places will only give you a 30-day proposal. That means after 30 days, you're going to have another one done. And in volatile economic times, that means that could go way up or it could go down. So yeah, there's just a challenge there. Obviously, the exterior building, the National Air and Space Museum has been going through that for the last couple of years. When the building was first building, they used not necessarily subpar, but it was not the quality of marble on the outside of the building that they had thought was going to be used. And now they're replacing all of that. And it's because the exterior of the building was starting to look pretty bad. So there's another aspect. And again, all of this is happening before our patrons get inside the doors. Another aspect of it is, and in this digital age that we all see is, just as the same as your curb appeal is, so is your website and your social media presence. How does that look? Does that entice them? Does that make them, want to come out? And does it match with the presentation that you're going to present inside?
And parking.
And parking. Parking is a huge other aspect of it. If you're a downtown museum, how does the parking work? So those are all things that, all that plays into the impression that you're creating for your patrons and what their expectations are going to be once they walk in the door.
Also, I would add admission. I just came back from the East Coast, and one day, some of us my family went to the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, and they had a special exhibition. The admission for the MFA at Boston, to see including the special admission, which was another $5, was $34 a piece.
Yeah.
And the parking, they have their own parking garage for 2 hours was $26.50.
Yep. Yeah.
That, we are so lucky here in Nebraska that so many of our museums are free or not charging like $29 a person for admission.
Yeah.
And then the museums are so big, those huge museums are just so big that physically you can't do it all. So you think, am I going to get my money's worth or, whatever. So obviously I don't get out of that. I was shocked.
Oh no, that's the way it is. I've been, tracking on how museums are on the admission side of things and how they're handling special exhibits, since that's what I work a lot with here. And I see a lot more of them are going the route of they will bring in a very special exhibit to charge extra. And I'm trying to think where there's a special exhibit that I was looking at. It's a Harry Potter exhibit, and I'm trying to think where it's at. I'm thinking it's out on the East Coast somewhere, but it is, it was $26, I think, into the museum and another $8 for the special exhibit. So you're spending $34 per person to go in and see their museum plus the special exhibit. And then if you got parking, if you want to stop at the gift shop, in looking at some of these big special exhibits, the ones that are big named ones, a lot of times the leasing agent, the one who actually owns the exhibit, they typically will also have it mandatory that they are allowed a space for a gift shop. And so they get to sell the merchandise, the museum doesn't. And so if you go to the Harry Potter and you want the Harry Potter stuff from the exhibit, you're spending $34 now plus parking. And now you're going to spend premium dollars for the merchandise on that. And if you're going to go see that and spend 2 hours roaming the museum, you'll probably get a lunch. And we have a cafe that, it's a very good cafe, but it definitely is more expensive than it was, proportionally than it was when we first opened here, when all you had was cold sandwiches and hot dogs. Now you can have gourmet hamburgers and chicken sandwiches and different types of wraps and things. And again, it's all very good, but it adds to what that cost is, and we keep it in our mind always as, here's what we're charging to come into the museum, and here's how much more we're hoping they spend, that they come and they eat at the cafe, they buy at the store, and they go do the simulator rides. A family of 4 could easily spend well over $100 on a visit to our museum. And as a museum, you look at that and say, okay, but how often are they going to come back now? It's a great way to, one way to offset some of that is to encourage memberships. But if you're going to a museum that is, 800, 900 miles away, maybe you don't want that membership because you're going to use it once. You might go there once every 3 years. So that, the admission plays into a big part of it, but also what else do you offer them, and are you charging for that? Do you have some extras that people can do that is no charge? A lot of museums go to a lot of hands-on activities, though those get more expensive to not only produce, but also to maintain. Here at our museum, we are looking at how we can have hands-on pieces that we can actually make ourselves that are not real expensive and easy to maintain. One of the things my team and I did a few weeks ago is we went down to Lincoln and went to Morrill Hall and to the Nebraska History Museum to look at how they do things. We got some great ideas that I think are going to be very inexpensive for us to incorporate, that will engage people a little bit more, hopefully add to that visitor experience.
And I think that's probably for our constituents in Nebraska, of which we have several on the call,
Yep.
That they're all pretty much self-developing
Yeah.
their exhibits. Occasionally they could take a can show. Occasionally they might bring in an exhibit designer type of person, but
Yep.
for the most part, it's doing it yourself.
It is.
Kind of DIY.
Yes.
And it also, what you're saying, Brian, is also bringing up to me that we're really talking about 2 different audiences. You're talking about your tourists, who are probably one stop and kind of person. And of course, for the museums like the MFA Boston, or where the Harry Potter show is, et cetera, that they're really pushing membership, so the admission and membership often go hand in glove.
Yep. Yeah, and the membership,
because as members you get much more of this. Admission is certainly free, and discounts in the shop and all that. I'm curious as to wherever the Harry Potter show was, when you have the exhibit organizer that is requiring that organization has the shop and all the proceeds, if they honor museum discounts. My
experience in talking with some of these is no, they don't. They don't give your members a discount in there. Now, where the members save a little is you obviously get into the museum free, and you just have to pay for the special exhibit. And you're right. It's usually just kind of the larger museums that will do something like that. We bring in rental exhibits from time to time, and the challenge is they are pretty costly. So you have to go out and raise all this money for a show that might be 3 to 6 months long. It's a way to get people interested. It's a way to get people to maybe buy a membership, but you have to balance it because it is staff time to organize, to basically find it, negotiate a contract, and then to organize how you bring it in, where you put it, work with the lease company for setup and operation, and then on the back end of everything. And so there's a lot of staff time that goes into that. Plus you have to increase your marketing. You have to see how you can work with education groups on these things. So there's benefits to it, but it can be a lot of work. It does make it, there's a lot of museums that choose not to do those, or they do smaller ones. The Smithsonian has a site. It's the Smithsonian Institute Travel and Exhibit Service. And you go to them and they have some actually very affordable, really nice exhibits. They're not really as interactive or as high tech, but they're affordable. And it gives museums the opportunity to show something different. And
And I know we have that in Nebraska. Is that
Mhm.
what the Humanities Nebraska helps to sponsor? Okay, because I know,
sometimes they do.
yeah, and obviously Tammy and Aaron are both saying they're very aware of it, so presumably.
Yes,
And
so-
it's usually a theme of some sort, like water, I think was a few years ago, so that the exhibition was about water, certainly a big thing in this state.
The Humanities does like a grant system to the posting person.
Mhm.
About $2,000 is what the grant is, but that provides you, that's the only, that's what you get, but you get the whole 6 weeks or time exhibit, but you don't have the freighting, you don't have the outlaw, of 10,000 or something. So it's a group effort for all of the different ones, but it's an application period of about 3 years ahead of time.
Yep.
And then waiting all them time frame. But you can also in there, you can get the Smithsonian also has a free poster system.
Yes.
So, and that is an interesting little one. I've done a couple of those and it's absolutely free. And so you create your own advertising off of that, but it provides you a same kind of thing. It's just posters though. It's not, and it's not physical items. Like a whole big room of exhibits you have to worry about. But yeah, that is a nice little piece in there, but it's through the Humanities that they fund it and they get that, they raise the monies and then provide it out. So,
Yeah, we're
How
actually
many
going to be
venues
hosting.
are there? Aaron and Tammy, about how many venues are there in a calendar year of the site?
So we have been chosen to host. It's called it's Votes for Democracy. It's all about voting and that sort of thing. And we're going to be hosting it next year. We get it from August through September. And we're one of 7 sites.
Okay.
And they tend to do about 7 sites.
6 or something. Yeah.
6 or 7. I think it just kind of depends on how much money they have and that sort of thing. So yeah, so and I think this year it's like something to do with working. I think that's the theme, the one that's this year. We've hosted one in the past, and then the second one that we were sort of pitch hitting for the library. Our local library was going to have it, but then they got flooded out, and so we brought the exhibit to us, but they still did all of the programming, if you will. And there is quite a bit that you have. I mean, you have to have a budget, and you do have to come up with exhibits and programming and that sort of thing. But I'm hoping that we'll be able to. We're going to tie it in with our 60th anniversary next year.
Oh,
so we're
nice.
turning 60 next year, and so we're going to do that. And we're going to, and it's also the 150th anniversary of Wahoo becoming the county seat.
Okay.
And we may play up on how Ashland, even 150 years later, claims that Wahoo stole the county seat. So we're gonna. I mean, they're still talking about it today. I'm sure some of these other counties are like that too. But so we've already kind of started. Yeah, you have to apply for it almost a year and a half in advance, and you have to come up with all of your programming or your at least ideas. And so when Mary Yeager sent me, "Hey, you got chosen," I'm like, "Oh, great! Can you remind me what I was gonna do?" Because it was just like, because you have to. It's so far in advance. But so she emailed me right away. "Hey, this is what you said you were gonna do." And so it's not that you have to do exactly what you said, but at least they need to know that you have at least some idea of what you're gonna do. And it does bring a lot of people in, and they do try, at least with that series of exhibits, they try to spread it out throughout the state so that it's not like both in like Omaha and Lincoln, it's maybe Nebraska City and Alliance, they spread it out so that it's kind of everybody theoretically within the state has a chance to get to it
Right.
at some point.
For these, what I call canned shows, are there now virtual components to them?
I have no idea.
We'll
I
find
haven't-
out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't really seen it like that. Not like the Smithsonian, like you're talking about the poster ones. Those are, I mean, it's they have the digital posters that you will print and you can mat and frame however you want to do it. What what's nice about those is you can look through there to see if there's something that kind of fits into things that you have within your collection.
Mhm.
And so it gives you a nice backdrop to pull out pieces of the collection and relate it to a national level, but show how, this is from Nebraska and this is how Nebraska relates into these things. We did one long ago where we brought one in for the Tuskegee Airmen. And then I went and I talked with the Naval History and Heritage Center, because it's kind of like the Air Force Museum. They have a large art collection. Well, they have theirs organized. So I actually borrowed from them their art based off of African Americans World War II. So then you can combine the two of those together to make a nice display. And then you look at we have a nice Tuskegee Airmen collection. So we combined all three of those into one exhibit. And all it really cost us was the printing of the graphics from the Smithsonian and paying a very simple shipping fee for the artwork that came from the Navy Yard. And amazingly, it shipped, I think it was 2 crates, because they had them all the images, because they're not the actual artworks, it's the prints of them.
Mhm.
And so they had them all sized the same. And so they're all matted and framed exactly the same size. So they made 2 crates for them, and they just shipped them straight load. You didn't have to go through a art carrier or anything like that. So it was actually a very, very affordable exhibit for us. And we focused it because we found out the Tuskegee Airmen were going to be holding their reunion in Omaha that year. So we planned it so that we
Perfect.
opened it, but we opened it before they had the reunion, and then they all came out. And in the end, we ended up using things that we created with them to create a more permanent exhibit out of it. So, I mean, so exhibits obviously are when they do, how you present, your collection is one way to ensure a quality experience for your guest. Obviously, guest service is, fortunately in Nebraska, I think getting people who are good at greeting and interacting with the public seems a little bit easier. Nebraskans are friendly. We're talkative. We are actually interested in other people. I was commenting to, we have one of our front desk guest services folks who recently has moved to Wisconsin to be close to family. But while he was here, I remember talking to him several times about, Kurt, you're great at greeting people and you're great at talking with them, but you got to move it along. He gets their whole story from them, and they're all happy, and he's directing them where to go and everything, and we love that. And I think that's something that I think a lot of us really have that, and that's definitely one way to ensure that. The first time I ever went to Disney World, which was like 6 years ago, when I came back, I was so excited to talk to our staff, because I told them, I said, yeah, you got these parks and these resorts that are immaculate and they're beautiful. I said, but honestly, their biggest selling point is their customer service. They're just always attentive. They're always looking to see how they can engage the customer. And so we talk with our volunteers about that, and our volunteers have been really good about if they see somebody that might look a little lost or looks really interested in something, just even our volunteers that work on the exhibits, they'll stop what they're doing. They'll walk over and talk to them because they love talking about the museum. And I imagine everybody's volunteers are like that. So that's another area that we can do to make sure that everybody who comes into the museum, when they walk away, they're walking away saying, yeah, this was definitely worth it.
I think that's true. And then my other question is, how do you treat your volunteers? I remember at some point it was a really big thing. There's always the thing like, what is the incentive for them to stay loyal to you? And do you give them do you treat them to a group lunch once a year or a dinner, or do you give them a little recognition, so many years of service, or do you combine all that, or do they get free cups of coffee when they come, or whatever? So
Yep.
Just keeping your
are-
volunteers because they are in
Yep.
essence their first line staff.
Oh, yeah, they are. They're first line staff. They're the heart and soul, I know, of our museum. We do different things. One is in August, we have National Volunteer Appreciation Day coming up, which I always forget about it. Fortunately, people will remind me. Each department in our museum we run our own volunteers. I found with my volunteers, if I just yell at them all the time, they really like it. No, not really. What I do in my department is I give them T-shirts. So they have a uniform that they can wear that is comfortable, and I picked a very bright orange color, which at first they thought I was being mean to them, but then they realized it's so I can always spot them. And now they really like it because everybody on staff and all the other volunteers know if they see this bright orange T-shirt with the museum logo on it, that's one of my volunteers, and they know they can ask them for help. And my team likes it when they get asked by other departments to help. Our restoration department does kind of the same thing. Our docents, they get a bright yellow polo shirt. So giving them a little bit of a uniform to wear, I think a lot of times they enjoy that. We do at least one lunch a year just for the volunteers. And we always try to make sure that all senior staff and possibly all the staff available, we serve them. So they, it might be, we might do a buffet thing, but we'll go through and we'll fix their plate. We get it all set up. We take care of them. And then we usually do some type of presentation on, here's what they've achieved, what projects they've gotten done in the last year. So the other department volunteers hear about it. I track obviously all the hours my team does, but we haven't put together a recognition for it. It's something I do want to do. And our restoration department actually has a board that they have. I think it's the 1,000 and the 5,000 hour boards, and names go up there once somebody hits those. And so it's more internal for them, but it's one of those things. Now I do know of other museums that they've created like little lapel pins. So once you hit a certain milestone of volunteer hours, you get a pin and it kind of goes up from there. Talking with some of our docents, they kind of like that idea because a lot of them are former military officers and they liked getting the little awards. With all of them, we did create on our 50th anniversary as a museum back in 2009. We created a special 50th anniversary lapel pin for that. And at the luncheon, we handed it out to all the volunteers. So they all got to wear those. And then more recently, as we created, it's a military thing, a challenge coin. And so it's just kind of a little bit larger coin that is for our museum. But we, as a staff, we use those to recognize our volunteers. And so we'll do a special presentation in front of the other volunteers and to say that this person has reached a certain milestone, or maybe this volunteer has been going out in the community to talk about the museum on their own time. And we've gotten some great reports on that. So we do little things like that, but it's definitely, you got to do something to remind them of their value. And that if you do it and you do it well, then they're more than happy to put that service in, and they're always proud of the museum they volunteer at.
Tammy, you work with volunteers. What do you do?
I have a small group. I had to unmute. It's like I have a small group of volunteers that I do, but we have had our little like a supper or a banquet kind of in here and rewarded that way. But we also have like name badges, so that like when
Nice.
that it's like it has, the other one has just she put her name on it, so it doesn't have just that, but it has a little badge. So we have little badges they pick up, and then they know that person coming, the greeting, they'll have a little identification that way saying you are part of here. Otherwise, they don't have a particular special uniform, but that identifies that.
Mhm.
And then we have done in the past, we have done like a history hero
Oh, nice.
award. So it's like the one year we did a glass, and next door to us is an engraving shop.
Mhm.
So it's like, can we put this on here? And Custer County history hero. And they got their own glass and presented those in front of the group at our Pi Social, which is about 150 people in here.
Oh,
So
wow.
community members, so kind of a little honor in front of that.
Mhm.
So we've got a variety. And then ours are also, I also have my other volunteers are different people, housing people, people that need to have that community service to sign on. So it's kind of so it's like not necessarily all of them get the same treatment, but they do the same task, because the probation ones you won't ever see again, hopefully. But they do somewhat of the same scanning or cleaning or things like that, but they're limited. But our long-term volunteers, I will have definitely the honor, the different, few different items on them too. And I have done like a Christmas present for them. Some, as I'm watching, is like, what is their favorite thing, what they're talking about, and then
Mhm.
find out where they were doing, and then find out something like that for them. So
Is that personalized for each one, or is it the same thing for all?
kind of personalized, but within the same budget zone. So they all
Well,
have a
first
different.
of all, I am just amazed that you are a site for probation, people on probation is, what is that, community service, or what is that called?
Yep.
So, and how's that work for you? I mean, hopefully they were never accused of theft or,
And I've very, very specifically left that as one of my requirements for sending somebody here. Don't send somebody that I would have to watch at all hours and doing. I'm in the same facility, but you can't oversee them all the time, because you get the phone call, there's something else. Yeah. So it's very specific as maybe a first time offender of something. The one was a mom that needed something, and needed her hours. So she did cleaning for, a couple of days of cleaning and glass cleaning and vacuuming and dusting. It's like, that was things that she could do. That part is like, and talk to the officer out there and give that as a site to pull in those sort of say low risk ones and any of that. So I have had the kids have to check in their phone.
Mhm.
So that is, don't have more than one at the same time. They tend to text each other opposite side doing. It's like, nope, I think I'll have to have you check your phone in, and you can pick it up when you're done. But that is, so I was like, that was like, oh, I don't think I can have both of these at the same time. They might have been in violation at the same group.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that was interesting. But the different status of those National Honor Society kids have come in. So it's just a variety. And then we've had the summer scholarship ones that bleed into the volunteers on other organizations. So it's just a variety of doing that come through. So that are, I say my regulars will be the ones that will get the different tokens and things.
Right. April, you work with volunteers, but their incentives are often academic, right?
Typically, yeah, it's usually because again, the thing, especially like with our topic, which is ensuring the best guest experience, it's one of those where, since I'm the only full-time employee, that means I'm not only managing the collection, doing all of the marketing and advertising, managing our social media, But also it makes it very hard and difficult for me to manage volunteers just because I don't have
Mhm.
the time to dedicate to it, so that, because yeah, we don't, for our tours and our open hours, we actually have UNK students who come, who are paid employees, and they're the ones who monitor the building while it's open and everything, so they have a good incentive because they feel like they have a stake in it since they're an employee, but also as a UNK student, you know, in a UNK building, they feel a little bit more connected that way, I guess. But when we do have volunteers, typically the only volunteers that I'm able to responsibly manage and agree to have in the building are, people who need like maybe just 4 hours to meet some sort of internship or academic requirement. Or we have two big programs in Kearney. One is Leadership UNK and one is Leadership Kearney. And I can't remember, I think they're either a year or a 2-year program that you apply for. And it basically trains you in a lot of leadership stuff, whether you want to apply it to, you know, making a career at UNK, or just like in Kearney, we have a lot of law enforcement who go through it, or various other leaders in the community will go through this leadership training program. And a lot of times they are required to do a certain amount of volunteer hours. And so for us, it helps benefit the overall guest experience and ensuring the best guest visitor experience, because they can do things that I'm maybe not able to get to, such as like deep cleaning and making sure all the cobwebs are gone and stuff. Because as most of us, I think, know, you could have the best museum in the world, but let's say if your exhibit is covered in cobwebs, or you're, you know, plus especially since we're in an older house, cobwebs and pests are inevitable. But or if, like, just, you know, not to get too graphic with it, but if your bathrooms are like disgusting or something, it doesn't matter how good your exhibits are, that's what people are going to remember. It's whatever's going to give them the biggest impression. So volunteers help us that way by being able to do those sort of like deep cleaning and really kind of ensuring that, you know, the floors aren't dirty and stuff like that. And so yeah, volunteers, we use them when we can, but it's on a very limited basis, again, just because I'm the only full-time employee, so my time is limited. But and our volunteers are always too efficient, which is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all. But it's things like projects I'll assign that you think are going to take, you know, days and days, and they can get them done in one afternoon sometimes. So it's hard to continue to come up with ideas for them to do while also supervising them and, you know, that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's the situation that we have over at the Frank Museum in Kearney.
I do remember that there was a group from the foundation that actually did silver polishing. Something in a historic home is a big deal. Well, Erin, what about you in your volunteer incentive?
Well, we talked about this when we did our volunteer Zoom thing, but we host a yearly brunch, and it's usually it's usually in the spring, and we send out an invitation to whomever has volunteered within the past year. It also goes to past board members, because usually they're some of the best volunteers that we have. You know, even though they're not on the board, they're the ones that still step up and help us do things. So we have a brunch that we and it's the board members who, you know, I send out at a board meeting, okay, I need, like this year we had breakfast casseroles. Okay, I need 4 breakfast casseroles, and I need orange juice, and I need rolls or cookies or something like that. And I had them fill out, you know, what they could bring. And then I had half of my board show up, and so they're the ones that served and helped the volunteers. I only had about 30 of them, 30 volunteers show up, even though I send out like 80 invitations, but everybody seemed to have something to do this year. We usually give them a small gift. Of course, we haven't done this in 2 years. So, so this year I just had a box of candy and a puzzle book and a pen, and we usually try to do it on a theme. This year my theme was volunteers are the building blocks of the museum, and so it was like Lego type things. So that was what the things were. So we just try to make it a little bit of fun, you know, that type of thing. So we do that once a year.
Good. Sherry, what do you do in Columbus?
She might have visitors right now.
Ah, there she
There we
is. And you're muted.
Yeah, there we go.
Oh,
Okay.
yes. Good to see
Well-
you.
I just counted. We don't have volunteers. Let's put it that way. I have 7 people that I have begged and pleaded so that they come in and so we can be open on weekend afternoons. Because I am the only employee. I'm a part-time employee, which in my mind does not mean 7 days a week. Just saying. So in the past, before COVID and all that good stuff, we have program meetings every month. And we would have one of the program meetings, and the volunteers would be, the greeters would be honored at that. And that's an open to the public kind of a thing. We haven't done that in the past couple of years because we haven't had our program meetings. And we're back now having our meetings. So at a program meeting coming up at some point, we will thank these people. They're weekends from May through September. And they get recognized in our newsletter and on our Facebook page and things like that. But and some of them have done it for years and years. But the ones that it didn't used to be as big a problem, but many of our standby volunteers from years ago have aged out and various things and just can't do it anymore. So we try to let them know, I try to let them know that they are appreciated. But there are weeks that I'm here 7 days a week because I can't get one of them to come in. But we don't have anybody who comes in and cleans or does anything else. No, it's just our greeters are the only volunteers, and we have a hard time coming up with them.
Yeah.
We
Just the way it is.
now pay somebody to come in and clean once a week. But we also now have employed a handyman, and he's the one that takes care of our lawn because we were trying to have volunteers or board members do our lawn. But as I mentioned at the beginning, we have 5 acres, not to mention another another building offsite that has a lawn and needs to be mowed. So we now have to resort to paying someone to do it.
Well, we have a lawn service that does the mowing, so I don't have to worry about that. And I am going to have, in years past, we've had someone from Versatile Services who came in once a week and did dusting and things like that. And then because of COVID, that all stopped. But the gal is supposed to call me on Monday, and hopefully we'll get someone from there who it's someone with a handicap of some sort, but they come with a sponsor and they can dust and sweep floors and things like that. So it'll be nice to have them come back. And but as I say, it's around here, there are so many things for volunteers that we're having a heck of a time getting any. And it's not like we aren't trying.
Yeah. And Brian, how about greeting the customer? Is there a person at each one of the different ones? Do we greet each person? Is there a recognition that way as a docent or a greeter or a different thing to make sure that person has a personal contact?
For our volunteers, yes, the volunteers are assigned to departments. So like curatorial, we have volunteers that help within the collection with our collection manager, and then we have ones that work on the exhibits with our exhibit manager. Our docent volunteers actually work with our guest services manager because she's the one who books the group tours that come in. And so she arranges with them, but we also do a daily publicly guided tour that one of our docents will lead. We've been very fortunate that a lot of retired Air Force folks in the area have been coming out to lead those tours. So they have some personal knowledge to talk about. I work with them on, here's the basics that we want you to hit, the information we want you to provide. But we encourage them to tell, if they flew a certain type of aircraft that we have, or they have something interesting in their personal history, we encourage them to talk about that. Our restoration department has their volunteers that actually work on the aircraft, and it varies. We have a weekend volunteer manager, a guy who he volunteers on the weekend. He oversees the other volunteers, and these are folks that have full-time jobs that come in on Saturdays, and it's hit or miss on who comes in and what they've got going on. We have some that show up about once a month and some that come every Saturday. The volunteers during the week, those are all retirees. Those are the ones that, they're very loyal. They have the schedules they come in on. Fortunately, we have a little break room for them in the restoration shop. So they come in, they have coffee every morning. They will either buy a lunch here or they'll bring their lunch. We have a fridge to put that in. And they're not coming in and putting 8 hours. They're showing up at about 9 o'clock and they'll be here till about 3. They have a mid-morning coffee break, their lunch break, and an afternoon coffee break. But it's without them, it'd be impossible for us to be able to hire people to do this work. They actually rigged up a little whistle in the shop. And so they actually will sound the whistle for their coffee break, sound the whistle for lunch. And they all have, we've discovered with them that they have specializations. We have one gentleman who is our master welder. He is 94 years old. He's been volunteering with the museum for 25, I think, years, going back to the old museum. We have one gentleman who is 96 now. He is our inventory manager. That's what he did before he retired. So he comes in once a week and he does an inventory of tools and parts and sees what we need. And then he communicates with our restoration manager. So all those are pretty well dedicated folks. On my side of it, I get a whole hodgepodge of folks. Sometimes we get interns in. That's working with the universities, that helps out. We will have an intern who needs to get their volunteer hours in to get their degree. And so we work with the universities to say, here's the project that we would give to them that they'll do a research and they'll write a paper for us. And it will pertain to something within the collection or an exhibit that we have. And as part of that, they have to go have hands-on working with the collection, hands-on working with exhibits. So that's kind of how we have it. Education. Has some volunteers that help with their outreach programs, so that they'll go with an educator. That way, instead of sending 3 educators out to a school for an after-school program, we'll send 2 volunteers and an educator out. And these are folks that they don't have to come to the museum. They're guided by the educator to help facilitate the programming there. And they have, either a history of working with kids or they are familiar with whatever STEM topic that we're using. So those are pretty much all of them. We do try to bring in interns from the universities for different things. Right now, we're trying to get a social media intern that can come in and do a lot of the office work of creating and doing social media for us. And then, that's what we've got for those. And then, like I said, each department does their own individual ways of recognizing them. And then we try to do at least a lunch for them. In the past, we have done dinners. I remember one year, and it was right around the recession time, and we were so thankful for all of our volunteers sticking around that we actually did a dinner. We got a caterer that we normally work with for events to donate the dinner for these volunteers, and then the staff again, we served it to them.
I have to take off. It's 11:30, so I gotta head out. But thank
Okay.
you all so much. It was good to see everybody.
Good to see you too.
We like your mug.
Yep, so it is 11:30. So is there anything else? I mean, anything you want to touch on, or
I was going to ask, and I'll just throw this out there, of how many of you either have a regularly scheduled or just even sporadically scheduled speaker series?
we do I call it a lunch and listen. It's like a
Okay.
brown bag, you know,
Yep.
and we try to do it every other month.
Okay.
Usually the even months. That's just
Right.
how it's come out, is the even months. And it usually has a topic related to Saunders County
Yep.
or adjacent, you know. So like our last one was just and usually it's me doing it. But this last one we did was we have on display, it's a journal that was kept by a gentleman who traversed the Oxbow Trail,
Okay.
or what became known as the Oxbow Trail.
All right.
And his great, I think it's 2 or 3 great grandsons. He owns the journal, but he's the one who he presented it, and he told the story of him going. He initially was going to go to Pikes Peak, but ended up in
Mhm.
California, and told that story. The next one we're going to have next month is a gentleman stepped up and say, "Hey, I'll give a talk on the history of our family farm."
Okay.
So yeah, so it's every other month. We try to do something. Like it's
Yeah.
just too much to do every month.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We do something kind of similar to that, and it's had various iterations. It's usually a Saturday morning thing, and right now it's called Aircraft Adventures, and we do it quarterly. Largely as we try to get some funding to do at least coffee and cookies. In the past, we've had some sponsors who actually would sponsor like a continental breakfast every time. And again, it's usually me doing the presentation, though I look for people outside the museum to help. And we typically pick an aircraft and we do a more in-depth look at the history of that aircraft and how it relates with Nebraska. And then we actually open up the aircraft and take folks through it. This is usually a members event. Though in the past we have opened it up to the public. The challenge with it is we tell them it's, say from 9 to noon, and we'll have some people who will show up halfway through the presentation. So we try to do that. We've tried other.
Excuse me just a
aspects.
second.
Go ahead. Yeah, Sherry.
My door is opening and closing and opening and closing and opening and closing, so I'm going to have to leave. Good to see you all.
right. Good to see you
Bye-bye.
Bye,
too.
Sherry.
So anyway, that we do that. We do in the past. We've brought in speakers to do public events. I think the last one we did actually was last October. We did an exhibit called Cold War in Film, where we talked about how the Cold War influenced cinema and television from the 1950s up into the 1990s. And I chose that just because I'm a film buff. I like movies, and it was interesting to look how it changed things. But I also know a gentleman who did research on some of this, so we brought him in, which it was having to pay his transportation and everything was it. He didn't have a stipend, but and it seems like it's hit or miss on how we do on things like that. It takes a lot of advertising. I tried the lunch type of program, but we're just so far removed from the communities that people don't come out here to have their lunch. Though I've looked at the idea of possibly going into Ashland and work with their library and do it there and be a guest speaker for them. We've done presentations there before.
Did you present at the Chautauqua
Yeah,
this past year or what?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was last year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
About the, I don't think sorry, I didn't go to your
That's
topic.
okay.
I literally took that day off to go down there,
Mhm.
because it was so close and it just interests me, and it's not a time period that I have a lot of knowledge on.
Okay.
So I was very interested in that, but I figured it's one of those things, you're so close technically that
Yep.
I could probably just pop down there, but I never get the chance to do that.
Oh, I know. It's really funny is I work with the Navy Reserves, and our unit has done a lot of projects at Camp Ashland and Camp Meade.
Mhm.
And my job with logistics is I was trying to figure out, okay, where are these people going to eat if they're at Camp Meade? And so I started looking at Wahoo. You know, they could drive over there, and because there's a lot more to eat. But we look at, well, it seems real simple that they're going to go out, they're going to work, and then they're going to take some time and just drive over there and then drive back. But you get so busy. And so then they turned up going to, there's a little corner store there in Meade, and they would go there or they'd bring their own food and eat. But then I actually drove through Wahoo. It was actually, I think it was back on Mother's Day. Because my mom lives in Oakland, and I took that way to go back to Lincoln. And I thought, why don't I come to Wahoo more? It's not that far.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I do have, this is a segue, and I know we're kind
Yeah.
of winding down, but
Yeah.
you mentioned the naval art and whatever.
Yep.
I actually did one of my internships at the Navy Museum at the Washington Navy Yard
Oh,
back
wow.
in 1999. So
Wow.
I was there. I know exactly where it was at, or at least when it was 30 years
Yep.
ago. You
Well,
know?
they have done a lot of redevelopment inside, but they're supposed to be building a new facility for them now, to where
Yeah, because they were in like a house and it was kind of cramped, I think.
they had a house, and then there was a hangar, an old hangar that they kept a lot of the big stuff in. And I did a video walkthrough many years ago. They contacted me about coming up with ideas of how to present better. And so they kind of took me on a video walkthrough and everything like that. And I was like, well, you got really neat stuff, but it's like going into a warehouse. And they said, well, actually it is a warehouse, but they're supposed to be, I don't know if they've done it now or not. I know they were going to do a whole new facility to actually create an actual museum there and then use the warehouse as a storage facility and then still have the house and everything.
For the other two, if you ever watch NCIS, that it
Yep.
takes place on the Washington Navy Yard.
Yeah,
It
yes,
does?
yes. No,
Yep.
that was my thing, like, oh yes, NCIS, you
Yep.
know about it. So,
We make use out of the Humanities Nebraska speaker program and to
Oh,
have
yeah.
speakers that way
Yep.
of doing. So we usually have the two for sure. And
Yep.
then, so in Rand, you pick different topics and do. So some of those are like, well, it's not my area of things. I have board members that also help on what topic would you pick?
Yep.
So.
and I also think that if you have, although I believe Humanities Nebraska limits you to 2 in a calendar year,
Mhm.
I think that if you actually have a series, you
Yeah.
can sort of apply for
Yeah.
the series and therefore get more than 2. I thought, but
You might, yes, but you can kind of, I don't want to say get around it, but if you have other groups that you can work with, like for
Mhm.
instance, like our genealogy group, they're entitled to 2. Our local library is entitled to 2.
There you
okay.
go. Yeah.
So we're entitled to 2. We have, we do a Christmas event called Christmas on the Prairie. They're entitled to 2. So, I mean, there's 8 right there.
Yeah.
Very creative. Oh, I
Yeah.
love it.
Really, you can, I mean, if there's a local Legion Club, I mean, VFW, they're all really, I mean, as long as they have some sort of documentation that they're, you can figure out a way to get around that 2 limit.
Very creative.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Good idea though, because I'm just thinking, I was like, there's other organizations that could use the same kind of thing
Mhm.
and hosting that group. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it could be like, like in terms like the SAC Museum, if you had I don't know if the Air Force Sergeants Association is still around or something like
Yep.
that, they could host it. It could be at your museum, but
Mhm.
they could be the ones that could apply and they could be the host for that program.
Yeah,
So,
that's definitely something. It's one of the things is some of the foundations I've been talking to lately have really been uh, asking who are we partnering with?
mm,
If we're going to ask them for money, or who are you partnering with on this?
Mhm.
A lot of times I talk about the base because we might want to use assets from people from the base, or groups from the base to help with these things. But now it makes me always think about that. So then you do think about other organizations that are out there. I mean, we do a car show every year, and we've gotten to know all the uh, car clubs and all those. But now we've gotten to know the Museum of American Speed really well, and they actually come out and they help us do the car show out here because obviously it helps them. But now we get to say we partner with them. And I was on a call yesterday and we got talking about some things. We got talking about biology and physiology. And I thought, well, wow, we could talk to the med center and see if, so then, yeah, when you start talking to um, Nebraska Humanities, and you say, well, this organization would like this speaker, they're going to do it in our location and you're partnering with them because you're providing the location for it. They're getting the speaker. And so, yeah, it does open up a lot more.
Mhm. I think lots of funders like that collaborative
Mm-hmm.
well, and you can
aspect.
always you can and again you can always get a little creative.
Yep.
We could, for instance, we had, of course, in Saunders County, we had an Atlas missile site,
Yep.
and our ordnance plant, operated during the Korean War, which fits your time period.
Yep.
So we could always figure out a way to work together
Yep.
in terms of some sort of program or series of
Mm-hmm.
programs. Just sort of get, working with, you know, talking with. I have one of my volunteers. She's very interested in preserving the ordnance plant history and that sort of
Oh,
thing. And
okay.
she actually
Yeah.
has 10 bomb carts
Really?
that she's trying to find homes for because the locations that they're at, she needs to move. And so
Right.
we can't take 10, but we can take 4. And so she's
Right.
trying to find other places that these bomb carts could go. But
Oh, neat.
there's no
Yeah.
reason why we couldn't come up with some sort of program or exhibit or
Oh, yeah.
something like that, just trying to think out of the box. Otherwise, I really wouldn't have a connection to,
Right.
aside from that little,
Right.
little space in there
Now we
that's
did,
hungry.
yeah, we did a collaboration, and this is probably almost 15 years ago with the Durham Museum. Um, we did Cold War presidents, and then I went to all of the Cold War president libraries to borrow items, and we created a large exhibit on that. They did uh, basically the White House, and they looked at the history of the White, and what they were focused on was they were borrowing. I don't remember who they went through, but they borrowed China, and it was just over different time periods. And then they had found a gentleman who has this gigantic model of the White House that it's literally like a gigantic dollhouse that he can decorate in different time periods.
Oh,
And so that's what they did. And so it was a neat collaboration because, our theme fits with ours and then theirs fits with theirs. And I definitely think, museums can do more of that locally so that you have maybe the same time period, but you present, here's what was going on in our county at this time period where somebody else says, well, here was the technology. We're going to talk about that time period. And so it just kind of can help out. And when we did it, we actually tried to do a shared ticket type of theme also, that if you go and see their show, you get half off our show kind of thing, and vice versa.
mhm. I think that's probably the wave of the future too.
It can be, yeah. I know, it's gonna be
Sure.
interesting. Well, thank you
Well,
all.
we've gone well beyond.
Well, that's the
Well,
problem.
I
when you let
learned a lot
curator
from you
host.
all, using, you being a site for probation folks. And I love the idea that for your volunteers, that the staff is the one who actually serves them their meals. I
Yeah.
think that's a very nice little touch, so.
Mhm.
And plus a lot of other things. So
Oh, yeah.
it's been very educational for me.
Very good, very
Thank
good.
you.
So, thank you very much, everybody.
Brian, what is your title at the museum?
It varies on who you talk to. Technically, I am curator, director of exhibits and collection.
Okay, thank you. That just
Yep.
kind of gives me a context since I didn't know you personally. So
Yep.
good to know.
Yeah, I was referred to as director of curation the other day. So
So that works too.
yes.
Well, hope you all have a good day.
All
Yes,
right, you
thank
too.
you very much. Thank you,
Thank
Brian.
you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.